Our book club book is A Good Woman by Dorothy Weil. The setting this book takes place in is Ohio, currently in downtown Cincinnati in a dangerous part of the town, but the main character, Mary Lou, grew up on a rural farm in Ohio. The time frame of this book is 1904 to 1991, but most of it takes place in 1990. But throughout the novel, Mary Lou has flashbacks to times in her past, like when she met her husband Don, when her daughter Elaine died, and when the time that her and Don cared for their grandson Billy. The main characters in this book are Don and Mary Lou. The book discusses Mary Lou's life, but she is married to Don, and Don suffers from diabetes and eventually dementia and depression, so Mary Lou cares for him throughout most of the novel, as well as herself. They had 4 children: Helen, Frederick, Elaine, and Sylvia. Elaine died at the age of 7 from heart disease, but the rest of her children lived to adulthood. Their first child, Helen, married Russell, who helps them out a lot, but Mary Lou and Helen have a strained relationship and don't get along very well, but Helen continues to help her parents and takes care of them when they need it. Their son, Frederick, lives in California. He is married and has 2 kids, but they never get to visit with them because they rarely come in town, and Frederick will sometimes call on the holidays, but they don't see much of Frederick. And their youngest daughter, Sylvia, was a very free-spirited person and very unreliable, and was spoiled as a child by Mary Lou and Don, and even though they have problems, Don and Mary Lou seem to favor Sylvia. Sylvia marries Mike, and Mike and Sylvia have Billy, but Sylvia and Mike end up divorcing, and Sylvia moves out of town, so Mary Lou and Don end up taking care of Billy and raising him for most of his life until he eventually moves back in with his father, Mike. And then, towards the end of the novel, Sylvia meets a new man named Thor, and they run off and get married, but their relationship doesn't really work out as Thor begins abusing Sylvia, so she moves back in with Don and Mary Lou. Summary of the book. This book looks at the life of an elderly woman named Mary Lou. Her and Don have been married for over 60 years and faced many hardships throughout the course of their life. Dawn's health deteriorates much worse than Mary Lou's, so she has to care for him physically, emotionally, and financially throughout most of the novel. And as she cares for her husband, she also has to deal with the changing relationships between her and her children. Past difficulties that the family faced with come up as she reminisces on these times, and Mary Lou reflects on how life was for her before she was elderly. And in the middle of the novel, their grandson, Billy, dies in a car accident, and because of this, Dawn's health deteriorates even further and puts even more strain on the family. And because of this strain on both Dawn and Mary Lou, Dawn eventually asks Mary Lou to kill him, and she does with the gun that she bought for protection. And after that takes place, and after she gets out of her short prison stay for that time, she ends up drinking rat poison. And at the end of the novel, Mary Lou and Dawn's children have aged considerably, and it shows them reflecting on how their parents were after some time has passed from their deaths. Themes that come up in this novel are caregiving. Caregiving is a big part in the role of this book, as Mary Lou took a lot of care of Dawn throughout the novel, but Mary Lou felt in the beginning of their relationship that Don was more of her caregiver because he made most of their decisions and made the money to support their family. But Mary Lou ends up taking care of Don as they age. And Mary Lou and Don also care for their grandson, Billy, and Sylvia when she moves back in. And towards the end of the novel, since Don and Mary Lou have aged considerably, their children try to become their caregivers, especially Helen, but Mary Lou is very against them taking on this role. Chronic illness is also a theme. As Mary Lou starts aging, she deals with a lot of aches and pains. Her daughter Elaine had heart disease or cancer while she was young, so she had a chronic illness, and Don has diabetes, and that affects his diet a lot and leads to his body shutting down on him. He has a lot of puncture wounds on his stomach from these needle injections. He has his leg amputated from his diabetes, and after his grandson Billy dies, he has a severe insulin reaction causing him to enter a coma and acquire some brain damage. Ageism is a problem that Mary Lou and Don faced through a lot of this book. The neighborhood kids often would taunt and threaten Mary Lou, and her children also held some ageism towards them, as Helen constantly encouraged them to get help, move out of the home, or tell Mary Lou that she's not doing as well as she might think she is. And Mary Lou often feels like she is looked over or is invisible when she's out in public or not taken seriously by everyone else because of her age. And the last theme is life course theory, specifically linked lives. Mary Lou and Don are affected in various ways by linked lives. When Sylvia and Mike marry, they acquire a son-in-law, and they also become grandparents to Billy, and Billy is a very important role for Mary Lou and Don as they have a lot of joy in taking care of him. Helen also married Russell, so they acquired another son-in-law through that link, and Russell helps them out a lot when they need him. And Thor is the last son-in-law they acquire, and who helps Don out a lot at first by giving him massages, but then he causes a lot of pain in the family because Sylvia is abused by him, so she ends up moving back in with her parents. So that's it for the presentation.